Well, we will get started, and we'll worry about others joining us when they do. It's a holiday weekend, so maybe they're all out holidaying. All right, so the reading this time wasn't actually that much. I'm looking for, where did we start?
It went quick, I thought.
Yeah, it's a small amount. I don't know how many pages, but it was
30 something.
Yeah, so it'll be a quick evening anyway. So it's chapters 12, 13, and 14. So we'll open up with chapter 12, the subconscious mind. I'll just read the beginning, because this is the way I explain the subconscious mind to other people. So I thought it was kind of cool that they did it this way. The subconscious mind consists of a field of consciousness in which every impulse of thought that reaches the objective mind through any of the five senses is classified and recorded, and from which thoughts may be recalled or withdrawn as letters may be taken from a file cabinet. So I always tell everyone your subconscious is like a file cabinet, and everything that you've ever experienced, your mind just kind of files away in a little file. But the problem is it could be something from when you're 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 or 30, like you don't know, but your subconscious remembers it. It's like a big recording. And sometimes you have to pull out those files and kind of clear them out. But I don't think we're always aware of what's in our subconscious mind, like why there's a phobia, why there's a fear, why there's a limiting belief around something. It's usually tacked on to something else, or something that happened in our lives that we can't always remember. But it says here, the subconscious mind draws upon the forces of infinite intelligence for the power with which it voluntarily transmutes one's desires into their physical equivalent, making use always of the most practical media by which this end may be accomplished. And it goes on to say how you voluntarily hand it over to any plan, desire, or purpose for which it's transformed into content. I always think of the subconscious mind. This is where I had a little bit of a conflict, because I think of the subconscious mind as involuntary. But this whole part, they're talking about it actually being voluntary, because he's trying to say, well, you have the power to change it.
Yeah, I think
it says, but you can't entirely control it, but you can influence.
Right.
Influence it. Okay.
That's how I took it.
That would make much better sense.
And that's why he gives you the positive and negative, and says when you focus on the positive, in a sense, you're feeding that to your subconscious. Well, you're feeding both of those types. It's just that you want to be more on the positive side rather than the negative side.
Absolutely. Yeah, then it goes on to talk about the thoughts of fear and poverty and all the negative thoughts. I liked this part on page 293. It says, if you fail to plant desires in your subconscious mind, it will feed upon the thoughts which reach it as a result of your neglect.
Yeah.
Which means that unless you feed it good stuff, it's going to just feed on whatever else you might be thinking about, especially if it's fear.
Crap.
Yeah. So I thought that point was really interesting. And then thoughts that are mixed with feeling and emotion. Are those that are imprinted in your subconscious mind, and only emotionalized thoughts have any action influence upon the subconscious mind. So I think that is probably the most important, but they use that all the time in manifesting and the law of attraction. When we talk about it, we always talk about taking that feeling of desire, that feeling like you already have it, and kind of imprinting that, and that's how you're going to change that file in your subconscious mind to create that emotion with that feeling. Like if you're looking for love, to think about all that love that you already have, or if you're looking for abundance, to already feel what that wealth is. And actually, I just got from one of our members, Meryl, who's not in this book, but she did a Facebook Live the other day, and I was watching it. And she said a good way to get in touch with that feeling is to ask yourself a question instead of just attaching to it. And I've been trying that for the last 3 days, and I was like, oh my God, that really does work. Like, what would my life be like if I had all the money in the world? Because you automatically think of it and what that feels like when you go to answer the question.
What would it feel like when this is there, right? What did it feel like to have the $1 million? What did it feel like to be successful? Whatever it is that you're looking to get, what does it feel like?
Yeah.
And that's also part of, what is it, NLP, right?
Oh, is it they ask questions?
Well, it's kind of putting you in the state or getting you in the mindset, right? Because when you think to yourself, what would it feel like to be happy? You feel happy, right?
Yeah, but I never thought of putting it in a thought of a question. Like when I try to manifest things, I think about, or like a successful business or the flow of money or what love would feel like. Like if I'm trying to manifest something, I do try to get in touch with that emotion of it. But by asking the question, I felt like I went there. I didn't have to pretend in my mind. Like I just went there. I thought it was so much better. So that was just something I learned through another one of our members. I thought that was awesome. But attaching that emotionalized thought to an action, because I think we don't realize, even when we're kids, like all the stuff that we either rightly or wrongly attach to an event or something that happens, like, maybe it was a fear. It could be like a fear of snakes or a fear of, something that happened. I have a sister that can't stand spinach because she choked on it as a kid. I remember her choking on it, but she cannot connect why she can't stand spinach. But the smell of spinach, the thought of spinach, she's just like, I don't know what it is. And I was like, I know what it is. You choked on it when you were like 5. I remember, I was there. But she just can't even stomach the smell of spinach, and that's why. But it's so imprinted in her mind, she just can't let go of it. But we have things like that about everything. He talks in here a lot about the people you hang out with, or your family, your friends, that are sometimes they think they're doing well, but they're really a little bit negative for you. Mm-hmm. And I think that your self-worth kind of gets dented a little bit as a child when you have that. He goes on here and talks about the 7 major positive emotions, which I thought hope was an interesting one, because I think of hope as wishing. And I don't know, I guess wishing could be positive, and then the 7 negative emotions: fear, jealousy, hatred, revenge, greed, superstition, anger. And I thought it was interesting that they wrote positive and negative emotions cannot occupy the mind at the same time. Yep. So if you're feeling one of those, you can automatically just kind of switch it out if you're conscious of it. Yeah. Just fill your mind with positive emotions and we'll all be good.
Oh, easy.
Yeah, good. Right? Now that I've read this book, I got it. On page 298, he talks about praying, which I think you can use prayer in so many different ways and so many things that we do, but I think it's really holding on to that feeling. It says, if you pray for a thing,
it's too late.
Yeah.
But have fear as you pray, and this is it, that you may not receive it, or that your prayer will not be acted upon by infinite intelligence, your prayer will have been in vain. Because by that time, you're praying in fear, right? And I see it in business a lot, that people are like, I'm trying to think good things. I'm trying to think I'm successful, but I know I'm not going to make it. or I'm trying to get new clients, but but if I got all those clients, I don't know how I would handle them. I'm like, no, that's called, you're blocking them.
And I think that's an interesting point, because it goes back to the feeling part of that, right? When people are saying, like, I can't imagine this, I don't know what that would be like, I'm in fear, but they can't tap into that feeling part.
Mm-hmm.
That's I mean, like, I think so many people are able to tap into the negative very easily. And what do we do about, I talk to people about this all the time, right? And then what do? We like ruminate on the negative. We go tell our friends, we're at a bar having a drink, we're talking about how upset we are. I mean, like, people carry that over and over. Something really positive happens and they go, oh yeah, that positive thing happened, boom, we move on to the next thing. We don't ever like give that positive place the place that it deserves.
Agreed. I think we dwell on the negative, and that's the one thing I hear about manifesting or the law of attraction all the time. Well, I try to stay in a positive space, or I was positive for a week or two and it didn't happen. I'm like, were you?
Well, they're not persistent. But clearly they did not read chapter 10 on persistence, right? From this book.
Right. But I think those limiting beliefs, those unknown blocks, kind of living in that place, which we talk about in here later on, the poverty piece, living in scarcity, that fear is what you're feeling. Who just joined us?
It's me, it's Sue. I just got online. I'm on the in my car on the phone.
Okay. Hi, Sue. We're just talking about the subconscious mind right now.
Okay.
And when we're not attaching it, or when we are attaching it to emotion, how it kind of imprints in our self, but more about limiting beliefs, unknown blocks, people saying that they're being positive, but really not. And one of the things we just talked about is prayer. Sometimes by the time people are praying, they have a fear already in them.
Okay.
All right. I thought it was interesting that he talks about the science of prayer on 299, and how he thought it should be taught in the schools. Not being attached to a religion, but the idea of wanting. And the state of fear. So just looking it over.
Well, and he talks too about, having your mind be right to receive, right? So if you're asking if your mind isn't right, you're, meaning that there's clarity, right? And the positivity and all of that kind of thing, then how can you be receptive to that infinite intelligence? You won't be connected with that. And that's interesting for me, because I do, mantras and stuff like that to write karmic debt and this kind of stuff. And it's all in alignment with that, right? Because a lot of that is to rid yourself of the 5 poisons: anger, attachment, jealousy, pride, and ignorance. So kind of interesting.
The same.
Yeah.
And I also think that's all about like giving gratitude, that we talk about a lot in our own circles. Right. That when you stay in that positive place, like you give gratitude for the littlest things, you're grateful that the sun is shining, you're grateful you woke up, you're grateful you have clean clothes, you're grateful, and you stay in that positive place, then you're always, you're attaching that positive emotion with good things that are happening, so more good things come.
Right.
You're constantly pointing out what's not working, or your fear, or that victimhood, or the scarcity, or the lack of abundance. That's what you draw more to you. So I think it's kind of that same thing. And I love that they. Go ahead, Sue.
I was going to say, and on the path of thank you, I know in my spiritual studies, thank you was like one of the greatest prayers. you know. So in reference to him, you know, about praying, I thought that was very interesting. You know, it's like the gratitude is, you know, you're just calling forward more of what you want, you know, in that positive state, being in gratitude.
Yep. Just being so grateful, because again, the negative emotions can occupy at the same time. I just love that. And then that chapter ends just by saying, faith and fear make poor bedfellows. Where one is found, the other cannot exist, which I loved. Anything else on the subconscious mind before we finish the chapter?
Sure.
Nope. I just love, you know, connecting that link. I feel like a lot of the book is just so embedded in going over and over and over again exactly what he's been saying, but it becomes clearer because it's so repetitive in every chapter.
That's why all the other books are so thin. They take out all the repetition. Go back to the chapter, read it again. Go back to this chapter, read it again. Come back to this chapter in a month and read it again. Just taking out those instructions, it'll be shorter.
All right, chapter 13, the brain, the broadcasting and receiving station for thought, the 12th step toward riches.
This was another chapter that whenever I go, this is so as applicable today as it was when it came out.
We say that every single time.
Yeah. Right?
It's crazy.
There's so little we know. And I think, man, think about how little they knew back then. And we still say there's so little that we know about the brain.
Yep. Absolutely the same. But I was kind of baffled that they talked once again, we brought this up in another, I forget which one, about the collective intelligence, about the receiving vibrations from others when you're receptive, right. And having that kind of, you know, like that whole brain straight. It says every human brain is capable of picking up vibrations of thought which are being released by other brains, right. Which I thought was wild. The creative imagination is the receiving set of the brain, which receives thoughts released by the brains of others. And I think it's also the vibration, because we've talked about, you know, being in other people's vibrations. So if people are very negative, you're feeling that negative vibration, that drag on yourself, and you kind of want to get out of there because you don't want to start thinking that way, right? If people are just bringing you down or being negative. So I think in a sense he's kind of saying that as well, but that the whole thought of collective intelligence in the 1930s is wild to me.
And it was also a perfect segue into the following chapter when we get there. Right? Because here he's talking about, you know, everybody's connected and you can do it. And the next one's all about intuition.
Yeah, I love it.
Sixth sense.
It says thought is energy traveling at an exceedingly high rate of vibration, a vibration at a much higher rate than ordinary thought. The emotion, and this ties it back to last week's discussion with the emotion of sex, stands at the head of the list of human emotions as far as intensity and driving force are concerned, which we've talked about, that higher vibration. The brain, which has been stimulated by the emotion of sex, vibrates at a much more rapid rate than does the emotion is when the emotion's absent. I thought that was great. That was awesome. So then I'm wondering,
a great tagline for a dating site. You know, that would be great to, like, you know, great marketing. Just saying.
See, I was trying to.
Don't be single. Don't be single. Come and get higher vibrations.
Don't be single alone.
Right.
You're thinking about it.
Come be single together? What?
Two heads are better than one. Increase the rate of vibrations together. All right.
Doesn't he say that in there too, in the collective consciousness, when there's more than one, you know, person in the room? Everything is so much higher and you're grabbing.
Yeah.
There's more to reach for. I don't know if it's in that chapter or the intuition chapter or one of the chapters. I mean, most of these chapters for me, when I read them, I thought, geez, I wonder how much of this is in the other books, because to me, this is all spiritual stuff.
I'm with you there, Sue. I'm like, I want to see it highlighted what made it to the final edition.
Right, because I'm thinking, wow, if this isn't if the other books are thinner, it's like all this stuff here reminds me of spiritual stuff. I wonder if it's in it. So I'm curious too. It's like, whoa.
and I don't know how you take out the spiritual stuff. What's left? Because it's all
right.
I believe.
I thought that too. I thought these last couple of chapters, I thought, gosh, if they took out all the spiritual stuff, there's not much left.
Yeah, it's just crazy. So it goes on to talk about the subconscious mind as the sending station for the brain, through which vibrations are of, whoops, wait, I messed up that sentence.
Where are you?
Vibrations of thought, the last paragraph of 303 going to 304. Subconscious mind is the sending station of the brain, through which vibrations of thought are broadcasted. The creative imagination is the receiving set, through which vibrations of thought are picked up from the ether. And they go on to talk about the greatest forces of the brains, the dramatic stories of the brains. And then how your thoughts become very tangible things. And that's how he gets the thoughts. Thoughts become things, which I always thought came from Louise Hay.
Where do you think she got it from?
But someone thought of it before that. Oh. Let me turn this off. All right. It is inconceivable that such a network of intricate machinery should be in existence for the sole purpose of carrying on the physical functions incidental to growth and the maintenance of the physical body. When he's talking about the brain, like the brain has got to be there for so many more things. It also provides a means of communication with other intangible forces. And then he talks about mental telepathy. That I thought was kind of interesting that they were doing studies way back then. Yet still today, people question.
How do they do that? What's the trick?
Yeah, they question psychics and mediums and intuition and knowing. And they performed tests way back then. And it says the experiments worked as well at a distance and several hundred miles away as they did in the same room. Now, I do believe some people have way more intuition than others. And not everyone can do things like that.
And I think there was a lot of scammers out there that
absolutely there still are.
And
yeah.
And that's why there's so much disbelief and people don't believe in it. Yep. And that can't possibly work.
Yeah.
But
I think we all experience it if we just allow ourselves to understand it. It's just like knowing someone's going to call and then the phone rings, or thinking about somebody, then you hear from them. Or, wishing something and it happens, or that's a knowing, that's a creating, that's a manifesting in its own way.
Well, doesn't he make a note someplace that, when you get those kinds of thoughts, that you are reaching into the collective consciousness and you're grabbing that down? I mean, that was my understanding of intuition, was that, you're just able to reach into the ethers and grab what, is there and bring it forward, kind of like you said, oh, someone's going to call me. And sure enough, they call. You pull that message. We call it intuition, but it's like you're reaching up and you're connected with that, the collective consciousness, which again, is the universal, whatever you want to call it, intelligence, giving you a message. That's to me what I kind of got out of it, that information.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Same with me. But I think it's what I was saying is people still don't believe it to be true, but they really do experience it. They experience it themselves. They just don't believe it.
Right. They don't grasp it. Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
Yeah. I think everyone has powers. They just don't know it.
This morning I not randomly, I sent a text to a friend that I haven't heard in probably since last Friday. And she wrote back, "Oh my God, I was just opening this to text you," right at the same time.
It happens. I've done that before to people. Exact same thing. Picking up the phone, but they're calling you.
Yep.
All the time. Same
So
thing.
why do we not believe it?
We doubt it, right? Yeah. I think when we quiet our minds, we do have knowing.
It's like that scary exercise you made us do with the colors on the piece of the paper in Philadelphia at the intensive.
Yeah. So I wrote that in the margins in the chapter when we talked about the sixth sense and intuition. For those,
I know, that's why I'm bringing it up. See,
you had a knowing.
Yeah.
All right. So the brain. I mean, do you guys have anything else on the brain? I thought the brain was kind of there wasn't a lot to talk about in itself in this chapter. I told you this was going to be a fast night.
Yeah, I thought the quote at the end was sort of out of place. I mean, it's a good point, but the depression, a blessing in disguise, reduce the whole world to a new starting point that gives everyone new opportunity. It's like we're talking about the brain, and then he goes on to talk about
the depression.
Sixth sense. I'm like, where did the depression come from? Where does giving everybody a new starting point?
Well, I guess maybe he's just making it like coming from a place of gratitude. Happy thought instead of a bad one.
Well,
I don't know. I'm making it up.
Well, and I thought that would have almost been more appropriately placed, like back towards chapter 15.
Yeah.
When he's talking about, the fear and stuff. Because, I don't know.
Understood. Yeah.
But who am I to critique?
Yeah, I think
right
too. Yeah, I think too that the depression, he was also referring to the fear that everyone had, and how it was created, and there's, I kind of get the point he's saying, in that, okay, now the depression, we were like on the worst part of things, so things have to get better, kind of scenario. Think more positively, and they did. Mm-hmm. But people probably didn't really realize that. I think just Napoleon Hill was really way ahead of his time. As far as
absolutely,
and so what he's saying is just kind of a quick summary of that. Okay, we hit the lowest part we possibly could in the depression, and we did create it, through our thoughts and everything. So now things, got better after that. That's just kind of my take on it. More like you're saying, the positive emotions kind of thing.
Yep. Absolutely. All right. So the last chapter for this evening is chapter 14, the sixth sense, the door to the temple of wisdom, the 13th step towards riches. This is the last principle in the book.
And he gave me he didn't give me the guilt complex, but I felt guilty. If you haven't done all of the other ones prior to this one's not going to work. I'm like,
right.
Darn it.
Yeah, but I also think that this was a thread through all of the chapters.
Yeah, it was.
Right? And now he's just kind of summing it up. The sixth sense, through which infinite intelligence may or will communicate voluntarily without any effort from or demands by the individual, the apex of the philosophy. The receiving set through which ideas, plans, and thoughts flash into the mind. The flashes or sometimes called hunches or inspiration. I think this is probably a chapter that was really hard if you're not spiritual.
Right.
Just to absorb. I think when you talk about intuition as being those flashes of brilliance, that makes sense if you talk about it that way, because I think everyone probably has those flashes of brilliance. I think the hardest part is the people that don't meditate, or before you learn to meditate. Those flashes of brilliance are kind of harder. I think that's why people have them in the shower or in the car, because that's when your mind is most quiet, right? You're not thinking about work or what you're doing. And that's why so many people come up with stuff in the shower.
Well, and you're also stimulating all your nerve endings.
Okay. In the car, I do a lot of thinking in the car too. A car's a big one for me. Music is a big one for people too, where they get those inspirations. But those are all the same as meditating. So people always think that meditating is that sitting in a quiet room, releasing your thoughts. But meditation can be different for people. It could be running, that people go into a meditative state and running or walking, exercising, yoga, so many things. But it's when we talk about the sixth sense or the higher intuition or higher self or whatever that is for you, it's that knowing, that flash, that seconds of brilliance. And he goes on to say the infinite intelligence, for this reason, is a mixture of both the mental and the spiritual. It is believed to be the point at which the mind of the man contacts universal mind. We call it all sorts of stuff. He also refers to it as, some people call it their guardian angel. Could be God, spirit, higher self, sixth sense, I kind of like. Call it knowing. Some people give it a name. And he goes on to say that there is a power, a first cause, an intelligence which permeates every atom of matter and embraces every unit of energy perceptible to man.
What page is that, Camille?
313, the bottom last paragraph. And he says, this infinite intelligence converts acorns into oak trees, causes water to flow downhill in response to the laws of gravity, follows night and day, winter and summer, each maintaining its proper balance in relationship to the other. So when he talks about on 315, his imaginary council, I wrote in the margins, it's just like our business intensive, which all of you have gone to that are on the line today. And I make you go through that, the calling of your intuition and how you get it to work for you. And Paul, I had forgotten about the colors on the little pieces of paper. Mm-hmm. That's the first part of it. And then calling in your counsel, who could be anything for you. And everyone kind of goes through that very differently, depending on where you are spiritually. I've seen people, call in all sorts of people to be their counsel. But I thought that was so interesting that I did this exercise and then read it in a book. I was like, wow. That you could call, but I thought his way of going through it and the council meetings that he had were wild. That and he so freely talked about it like it was such a normal thing in 19.
Although he did say that he has never talked about this to anybody, and this is the first time is when he's printing it, when he talked about his imaginary council.
Yeah, but it's clearly out there.
Yeah,
I mean,
at that point.
Yeah. I thought that was wild. And I'd be interested to know if once going through the business intensive, did any of you guys ever call on your imaginary counsel again?
I haven't recently.
Yeah. I mean, he did it for like weeks or nights or.
Then he stopped?
Yeah.
And he came back?
Yeah.
Because he didn't know if it was real or a dream. When who was it? Lincoln came to him, right?
Yep. Yep.
I was fascinated at the amount of detail that he had. So if I thought, okay, my imaginary counselor, we're going to meet, I would just picture them, everybody's there at the table.
Yeah.
Oh, he's late and he came in and he's got this excuse and this is what happened.
Yeah. It was almost like a dream state, right? That he was going into a deep thoughts. But just from doing it in the business intensive, some people do it that way, some people do it other ways. And it's my belief, and I'd love to hear you guys, it's my belief it's what people are comfortable with and are okay with in their own head. You know, like people don't believe that they could have it, or they have the intuition to be able to carry on those conversations. Does that make sense? Like it's their own limiting belief. And
you know, I think you're right on that, Camille. It is our own limiting belief, because I want to share something with you guys. I recently had an experience myself where, you know, we all hear our voices. You know, we hear their voices in our head talking to us. Okay, this one's saying that one's saying this. And it was really quite it actually took me back. I actually heard this voice inside of my heart. You know, it was a time when I was very quiet. I wasn't meditating or anything like that. I was just sitting there.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it was just like, I was like dumbfounded. It was like as if someone pushed me over and said, listen to me, I'm talking to you. And it was coming right from my heart, you know, and it was like, whoa, you know. So, you know, at those times, I do think we all experience stuff, but we're afraid to talk about it, you know. And here he was in his, what I thought was his creative imagination, which is exactly touching, you know, the universal intelligence, as he calls it. And, you know, and in this day and age, some people, you know, would say, oh, he's totally nuts. But he wasn't, you know. It's like we have these things that happen, but we just don't believe them, you know. But he was open enough, even in that day and age, to talk about it. I thought that was cool.
Yeah. I think it's wild. And the interesting thing is all the, you know, the names that he mentioned in the beginning that he was interviewing, I wonder if they did the same. Like for him to put it in this book and say like, these are the steps. And he says he got the steps from studying all these other people. You know, is this something that they did regularly, that others did as well?
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was really interesting. But I think we all kind of get those hunches and flashes of brilliance.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes on just to say, I'm on page 322 now. The fact remains that human beings do receive accurate knowledge through sources other than the physical senses. Such knowledge generally is received when the mind is under the influence of extraordinary stimulation. The sixth sense often comes to one's rescue and aid by split seconds in avoiding the accident. Oh yeah, that's another thing. Yeah, like when you're in a car and something happens and all of a sudden, you know, your mind can figure it all out in split seconds. It's crazy, but we all do have these amazing abilities if we just put our mind to it. For me personally, I don't think of it as a higher vibration, although it must be. My flashes of brilliance usually come when I'm most quiet. So when I'm stressed about something, I can never figure it out, and I always have to step away. And I find as I grow this company, the quieter I am and the more time I take to be the vision, to read more, to step away from the everyday piece of it, the wider my brain goes, the more things I think, the more things I figure out how to do. which is hard because when you're trying to grow a company, all of us are entrepreneurs. You know, it's the day to day that you're just trying to keep up. You're just trying to keep up. But the growth of it is actually in the quietness and trying to, you know, figure out your next step. I don't think you get there by trying to write these really creative strategic plans and all these measurables, although I think that's all important for measuring. I'm not saying that. But I don't think the brilliance really comes, or that next step, or that opening, or that how and all the steps there without the quiet. And it just comes to me. When I can't figure out anything, I just decide to stop thinking about it because I know it'll come to me.
Well, that's what I think. I think you're right there. It's in the silence that we are actually reaching to the greater, okay? So that we can hear, you know, what's going to come through. I mean, it's there. It's just we can't hear it because, like you said, all the other stuff that's going on. So when we quiet our mind and just quiet our physical body, period, you know, the if you want to call it vibration, whatever you want to call it, it's there. You're going to find it. You're going to, like you said, you're going to reach it, and voila, there's the answer. You know, it's like, where did that come from? You know, and it's just that you were open to it, and it was allowed. You know, law of attraction, all that stuff. I mean, all these different paths that are out there, you know, are leading to the same kind of thing, just different ways of saying it. I think it's really cool.
Yeah. And he does say on 324, the ability to use this great power comes slowly, which is so true, right?
Yeah, like when he says, you know, it probably won't come to your 40, probably till you're 50.
Right.
Okay, that's good. Good to know.
So, yeah, I was like, okay, we're right on track. I like it.
Yeah. I'm just reading. I think it's kind of interesting how he talks about that maturity, you know, those levels of maturity, and gosh knows I experienced it. Like when you talk about, you get to that point where you kind of wonder what life is bringing you, what your purpose is, and being okay to just be who you are. I love that piece of it. And then he ends with talking about faith versus fear, which is how exactly how he ended the last chapter too. Wait, now I'm going back to the last chapter. Wait, what? Wait.
Yeah, I thought the last page there was kind of I was like, was I supposed to read that, or is that almost like the introduction to chapter 15?
I think it's, I don't know.
Because 15 is talking about
the end of 12. Yeah, sorry. The end of 12 ended with faith and fear make poor bedfellows, where one is found, the other cannot exist. And then he ended 14 with faith versus fear, and kind of did it all over and said about the previous chapters described. And then he goes into the 6 ghosts of fear, which we'll do next week as the end. But
that's a long chapter.
It's a long chapter, and that's why we made it next time. But next time we'll also kind of wrap up the whole book and the thoughts and kind of where we're going to go from here. I didn't finish reading that, but I don't think that's going to be a big discussion. So tonight's discussion was kind of small and short. But we did finish all 13 principles at this point. So we'll just talk about...
Go forth and prosper.
Yeah, the 6 ghosts of fear will be next week, which will be our final week. And then we'll wrap up about the book, and we'll wrap up... Excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you. And we'll talk about if we want to do further study on this book, because we've talked about that. If we want to do something again, and stick with this book. If we want to go to other books, if any of you want to do a book, if we want to take a break, do something else, and we can do it, you know, by a book like this, though, we had to break down because there's just so much in it. And we could take it further if we want to. But I thought it was a really important piece to get through. I have a few absolutely favorite books. This is at the top of the list. How to Win Friends and Influence People is another favorite. Rich Dad, Poor Dad is probably one of my absolute favorites that I think everyone should read, and that's all about money.
That one's on Instagram quite a bit. That author and his book. I mean, he's you know, so I thought, God, I haven't read the book, so I'm thinking that might be a good one for me. But I thought he's really on Instagram quite a bit right now. Yeah.
I recommend that book to absolutely everybody, especially if you're thinking of running your own business, because it goes through how you perceive money. So that's where it comes up, like your scarcity, if you feel like abundance, like where your thoughts about money come from. And it's kind of, it really hit home for me. It's crazy. And it's a story about, you know, a guy that had two dads, but one was brought up in one was scarcity and one was abundance, and how he learned both sides of it. But how you view money is the most important piece of it. And I see it all over the place. That's one of my favorites. And another one that just made the list, which I have not read yet, is called The E-Myth.
Michael Gerber?
Yeah, have you read it?
Yeah.
Is it a good book?
It's a good book.
Yeah, because it made the list of some of the top 10 business books. And I had not read that one. I had read most of them. But that one I hadn't even heard of, so I may have read that one. The Go-Giver, I liked that one. Big Leap I finished. There's so many out there. So many out there. Cash Flow Quadrant, I think everyone should read if they just want to know personal finance. But there's a lot of spiritual ones out there too, which we could talk about if someone else wants to run a book, to do a book. Or we can all just read a book and then have one night of discussion too. So there's lots of ways we can do it, but we will talk more about that next week, and hopefully without it being a holiday weekend, more people will be able to join us, and we will do the final chapter, which is chapter 15, all the way to the end. So if there's something after chapter 15, I don't know if there is.
No, there's not.
Standing Army is at your service.
Yeah, is that something we need to read? I'll probably read it anyway.
7 pages.
Yeah, so we'll read all that too. So we'll go right to the end of the book. And we'll discuss that, and then we'll talk about where we want to go from here.
Okay.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah, that's really good to know. Everyone says, glad you're home. I'll talk to you in a minute.
How unprofessional.
All right, so that's it. Any other thoughts or remarks for this evening?
Can we start a thread in the Facebook group and just list book titles?
Yeah, I've asked before, but I'm happy to start it, or you can start it, or
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
yeah, because I'm always wondering what, and people ask me all the time about the books. I was going to do a like a Facebook Live, which I'm going to start doing, and start with like, what do you read? Because I think what you read is so important to building your business, even the magazines. And I just ordered.
The Inquirer is something I shouldn't spend my time on. The National Enquirer.
Oh my gosh, did you see that boy who got abducted?
I don't judge. I don't judge.
That little boy who got abducted by aliens.
Yeah. Supplement it with some business stuff so you know what's going on in different markets. I read Inc. magazine. Paul, I think you actually started sending me that when you became a member. right? And now I continue it because it has so many entrepreneurial things in there that leads me to other things. You know, like I read about other people building businesses. And I just signed up for another one or two. I don't know. They were like entrepreneurial things. Because I think it's important to kind of stay with what's going. But definitely the business books, all very, very important in what you're reading every single day. And not on Facebook or wherever else you're getting your information from.
Darn.
So some of those groups are really good. So, all right, I'm going to wrap up the call. Thank you guys for coming out tonight and joining me, and I will see you all next week.